and welcome back to another episode of Web3 Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Wolfson. Today, I've got a wonderful interview lined up for you all. I am here in my favorite city, Paris, and I am speaking with a friend and someone who I've known for a while who is doing something very fascinating in the crypto industry. His name is Benjamin Eymère, and he is the founder of Soilonic. So really excited for this interview. We talk all about tokenizing soil and the impact that's having on humanity. And this episode is very much focused on blockchain for good. So I encourage you guys to watch and listen to the entire interview with Benjamin. Before getting started, I also want to take the time to remind you guys to like and subscribe, especially if you enjoy the content that you're seeing today. I've got plenty more of that coming your way. And without further ado, let's get started with today's interview. Hi, Benjamin. How's it going?
Very good. Very happy to be with you here today.
I know. Yeah. So I'm delighted to be here in Paris. The last time we saw each other was in New York. So it's always good to be back in one of my favorite places, actually. I love Paris.
You do?
I do. Yes, I do. Surprisingly. Well, I don't know if that's surprising, but yes, I really love Paris.
I mean, it's an interesting place because it's full of history, but as well, it's very crypto friendly. It's been crypto friendly for a while now, so I'm sure you feel with a very good community in the crypto space, and you get to see great museums too. So
yeah, I know, and obviously the shopping and the food, but that's for another podcast.
That's a lot of proposals that Paris has to offer, right?
Yes, for sure. So Benjamin, before we get started with the questions, could you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got started in the crypto and blockchain space?
So being a former lawyer at the Paris bar and New York bar, I really enjoyed working in the US for a while as an attorney, and then I was called by a media company to become the CEO of it's a fashion media company called Officiel. And it was a very interesting journey because we had to take a print media company and developed it around the world through a lot of licensing system, direct operations as well, which led us to take the private company L'Officiel to a public pipe and make it and list it at the New York Stock Exchange about 4 years ago. And obviously, this mix of legal background, connecting it to cultural institution like 100 years old fashion brand was a very defining moment for my career. And during COVID, my wife and I moved out of Paris to our family farm, and she was like, "Look, we need to take care of it. It's going to be our estate. What shall we do about it?" And we started researching, and one of the person working at the farm said, "Oh, hemp's very good for soil health. You should start growing hemp." And my partner wife she's an art curator, so she thought, "Oh, we should try to restore our soil health because it was conventional farming. And as we use hemp to clean our soil, we should also invite artists and people to witness that change of biodiversity within the land." And it's been a very interesting journey to see how artists, scientists can work to the service of making a better soil. So we worked on transformation of hemp, we worked on hempcrete, we worked on hemp textile, we had artists using our hemp textile to do exhibition, we had an architect using our hemp walls to do, and we realized that a farm was much more than just a place where you grow wheat and you sell it to the local cooperative. A farmer can be more and can be a producer of fabric, but also a producer of idea. And I think that was like a very turning point to us, that being a farmer today, he's no longer just farm something and sell it without having a possibility to get the margin from the product that you are doing. And France is very interesting in this regard. You have Champagne, you have Burgundy, you have a very high agriculture in this way. But it's true that hemp was kind of a new place for us to grow something very cultural around it. So doing that, it was very interesting because we got a lot of help from European Union to diversify the revenue of the farm, to host people at the farm. And they helped us a lot. And then I tried to say, oh, can I get some subsidy for cleaning my soil? Is that something that the EU, which has about 135 billion grant program connect over the next 10 years connected to cleaning soil. Because you have to know that like farming soil, 75% of farming soils in the world are degraded by what you call the green revolution, which is actually pesticides and so on. So then, we started looking at it, and we were getting a lot of help to do an art residence using the hempcrete of the farm because that was in line with regulations. But when we tried to sell the carbon credit from our fields of hemp that was being cleaned through hemp and storing carbon, we're getting like 80 euros per acre. So it was very small amount of help that we were getting. So like this is a problem that a farmer that has a clean soil doesn't get rewarded for it. And the only way for him to get rewarded if he goes in sort of regenerative farming practices is to increase the price of the product. But we all know that in the time that we live in, it's hard to increase the price of a product to a certain extent. And that's sort of like how my background led me into thinking of Soilonic. Now, why Web3? Maybe to give you why I think your question was also why I've been involved in crypto and so on. I started being involved in crypto in 2018. I created for the fashion group that I was the CEO of, I created something called the Taste Token. And was not a huge success because I think a media company's role is not necessarily to create a token, especially in 2018. But the concept was rather interesting and influenced us a lot. The concept was about, if you give me as a consumer element of your taste, I'm going to give you a token because your taste has value. And with that token, you're going to be able to buy products from our advertisers at discount. So the idea was to reward the taste of somebody. If I know that you like denim and high boots, you're probably going to buy denim and high boots in the next 10 years. So almost like a discounted cash flow value, you could have a discounted consumer value. And that's how I started getting involved. Then we opened some land on the sandbox. We discussed on how to protect the archives of the magazine at the time on chain. There was interesting IP issues. You don't own the right of the image, but if you put on chain the actual file, there is a kind of new ownership that's being created. So I find that the mix of the capacity of Web3 or crypto to embed rights into a contract, which is more my legal background, but to create at the same time what you call internet finance, but also cultural finance in a way, that people get likes meme coin, or people like real world asset, or people like emerging coin out of a blockchain. There's always culture that comes back. And then I've seen so many in the fashion world, in the luxury world, so many like cultural thinking designed just for social media without creating directly consumer ownership, that I think the consumer ownership is something key. Last but not least, it's also when you list a company, you realize you think of what is the value of your stock. And sometimes, I've always been thinking, and I'll give you an example with, I'll give you LVMH as an example, but could work for Kering, could work for Richemont. But to me, the main owner of LVMH is the consumer of the bags of Louis Vuitton rather than the owner of the shares. And so I think there is kind of a tension in traditional finance when you own the shares of a company, but you don't contribute to the revenues of the company. If you are, as a consumer, you contribute to the revenues of the company, well, maybe you should own that company. So I think, that's when I realized that crypto, Web3 applied to either consumer goods or applied to shares of the company could have some common bridges.
Right. Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And I didn't know that about your background. So thank you for sharing that. So you've been in the industry since 2018 then. So basically you and I got in at the same time. Now let's talk a little bit about Soilonic, because this is your newest project and I know you're very passionate about it. And I want our listeners to know what you're doing with soil and how blockchain is involved and how all of this is working to, get to your end goal here.
Well, Soilonic is kind of the it's not the conclusion. It's the first chapter of how we can become a new generation of farmers. there is already a movement in America that is called soil farmers, where people are selling their soil in good health for other farmers to use it. So this is not a completely new concept. I'll tell you one of the problems that I've identified in farming. Right now, if you buy a land in Champagne, that could be worth up to 1 million euro per hectare. If you step outside of Champagne, which can be a meter away from the actual geographical limit of Champagne, you're back at 10,000 euros per hectare. Could be exactly the same soil, but the geographic AOC makes that you only define the value of the land, which is the biggest asset of a farmer. You only define based on where it's located, which made sense maybe 100 years ago, 200 years ago, when everything was limited to 15 miles radius system and you were exporting assets from this radius, and that was the way humanity was working. In today's world, with global internet, global communication, digital AOC maybe have more space to live and survive than geographical AOC. So we thought, what could be the digital AOC of a farmer in order to value his land in a different way? And then we looked at several examples like gold standard, gold token, gold back token. And there was an example of a gold mine in Mozambique, I think, which there was a very big environmental risk into mining the mine. So the owners decided to create a token out of the mine, which was the statistical extrapolation that what you could extract out of the mine in terms of gold, and they were tokenizing the statistics of the extraction. And I thought, oh, wow, that's amazing, because you can basically sell something that isn't in the ground, but you don't need to destroy the ground to sell it, because you could keep it in the ground and give the rights to people to own that gold that is in the ground, not extracted yet. So that was like one example that we received. That was actually given by one of our co-founders, Arizona Muse. I'm sure we'll speak about our co-founders. And then I started to think, because I was at the beginning working more on like valuing healthy soil of farmers, more on carbon credit based or biodiversity credit based and everything. So how much carbon are you sequestering? This is how much your land's worth. It was very low amount. We couldn't find the right model with that system, and the carbon market credit is a bit unstable, as I'm sure you know. So then we thought, okay, what would happen if a farmer that has a healthy soil was digging his soil, the one that you cultivate, and was putting it in bags and was selling it as potting soil in supermarkets? How much would be worth in value 1 hectare of soil? Was amazing, because we made the math with 30 centimeters of depth, 1 hectare, and it was the same price as 1 hectare in Champagne. So if you value the land of a farmer not according to where it's located, but according to its potting soil value, you get to the same price as the most expensive land in the world. We're like, oh, wow. So basically we have farmers sitting on gold, if you consider a soil of a healthy farm at the value of potting soil. And right now, when they go to the bank or when they try to increase the product price, they can't. It's too complicated. When they go to the bank, nobody is asserting the right value for their land. And we have a way, using blockchain technology, to value that land at the right price of its potting soil value. So it's almost like a fractionalization of what's sitting under you, which is, in history you have about 6 or 7 agrarian reforms, whatever you want to call them. And this is what blockchain can provide to the next agrarian reform, is to be able to fractionalize the ownership of what's underneath the land. And this is exactly the philosophical reasoning of Soilonic, is that we create a coin, and that coin is sitting on 2 reserves. The number 1 reserve is the impact reserve. So we guarantee that 50% of all primary sales of the coin goes to a network of certified farmers. The second reserve is a physical reserve, because we know that an investor doesn't want to only own impact. That's hard to resell, that's hard to value. The second reserve is a physical reserve, where the investor can always exchange his coin for 1 kilogram of potting of soil, of physical soil. But in 10 years, if he keeps that coin for 10 years, the new redeem multiplicator will be not 1 kilo per coin, but will be 35 kilos per coin. So as we increase the underlying asset, we also reduce the supply of the coin, because the coin is limited to 2.1 billion cap supply. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit like Bitcoin, but rather than the halting moment and everything, the way we work is every year we increase the redeemability of the coin for soil, which rather than having no intrinsic value and just an impact and a moral value, we add to the impact and moral value, we add a physical real world asset undervaluing the asset. And on top of that, the real world asset is increasing on a 10-year stream from 1 kilo to 35 kilos. So it's a highly inflationary system in terms of underlying value, together with a limited traditional crypto cap supply system.
Got it. It's really interesting, actually. Basically, you're tokenizing soil.
Yes.
And you're doing that to help farmers get their fair share of what, the land, I guess, right? The land that they have, but also allowing investors to invest in tokenized soil.
Exactly.
So it's a very interesting model. And I mean, you don't hear a lot about that at all in the crypto space. You hear about tokenizing gold. We obviously know about Bitcoin and Ethereum, but soil is interesting. Why? What is and I mean, you gave examples of the value of soil, but why would an investor choose to invest in tokenized soil versus tokenized gold or Bitcoin?
Well, first of all, if you look at statistics, farming soils, which are responsible for 85% of human feeding, 75% of farming soils are degraded. So the ones that are in good health are scarcity. People buy gold because there is scarcity in gold. So that's the number one thing. The number two aspect, when you actually think about it, is that if you have gold in 50 years, but you have no food, no healthy soil, your gold will be worth nothing. So all the other assets that we're talking about as primary assets or primary investment will be worth nothing if we can't eat. So it's kind of like it's time for nature to be a real asset. And that's a lot of banks, a lot of institutions are working on questions such as put nature on the balance sheet. That's a big finance question. Well, believe it or not, blockchain is the answer for that. Because if you're tokenizing nature in a smart way or in a agreeable way, I would say, any company that purchases our token can put it on the top of the balance sheet. If you purchase a carbon credit, you compensate it straight away from your emissions. So here what it allows us is to put nature on top of the balance sheet in the intangible asset class. And if a company purchases our coin and put it in the intangible asset class, that means that every 6 months, they can revalue it at fair market value. Now, what is the fair market value of the right to 1 kilogram of soil that has contributed 50% of its value to help farmers giving good food to the rest of the humanity? Is it worth 1 kilogram of potting soil that you're going to use for your flowers that you're going to buy at Whole Foods? Probably. Is it worth 1 kilogram of potting soil that you're using for a bonsai? Probably not. Difference of price between 1 kilogram of bulk potting soil that you would buy in Kenya is 20 cents per kilo. If you buy a kilogram for bonsai potting soil, it's $400. So you have a spread from 20 cents to $400. We took a projection that our coin should be worth between 20 cents and $3 to have a range of value that made sense. So why would people buy soil? Number one, to save humanity. Number two, because it's a scarcity that will gain value in future. And number three, why would they buy Soilonic? Because it's embedded into a contract that guarantees the increase of the underlying asset, as we discussed earlier, but guarantees a royalty distribution system back to the farmers. Mm-hmm. Because that's something that is key to why blockchain is useful. Because you want to make sure that every time we sell a token, money is flowing towards farmers. Because otherwise, there's no good being done in our coin. We're just selling soil. We're not just selling soil. We're guaranteeing by soil an impact to farmers that are helping humanity. But I also want to raise a point, is that in year one, we only have 1,000 farmers. In year 10, we have 20,000 farmers, right? It grows. The impact ledger grows every year. But it's more than that, because we have some farms that are much larger than small regenerative farms that are not using pesticides and fertilizer anymore. But we're just putting 1 hectare of their land because they're a large farm. But then they can go to their auditors and say, look, you are valuing my hectare. It's a farm in Latin America. You're valuing my hectare at $500 per hectare. But I'm sitting on $1 million worth of value of potting soil. Soilonic told me that. So now you're going to revalue in my own balance sheet at a fair market value, what is the value of my land. So you see, it's a movement. It's a movement where tomorrow, everybody says that big businessmen, they buy land now. It's the new gold. They buy forest. That's for rich people. But there's a lot of people that are living from the earth and are providing services to the humanity by the earth, and they are not being rewarded for such. So we want to create a system where farmers makes more money because he's sitting on gold, but he's not selling his gold at Whole Foods for Mr. or Mrs. Johns that are using it for their potting soil because he wants to feed. Well, we got to make it out to him and pay him and giving some rewards for that. And it's connected, we were speaking about the smart contract. A smart contract that can provide royalty to farmers in exchange for verified data. And we'll speak about what kind of data we're expecting from the farmers. And at the same time, the investor, rather than just paying for impact, is guaranteeing that the community collectively of coin owners owns the land to back up the intrinsic value of the coin.
Got it. What is the name of the coin?
So the name of the protocol is Soilonic, and the ticker for the coin is Soilo.
Okay. And can that, how would people invest in that? I mean, and also, are we talking about institutions or retail investors?
So that's a very interesting question, and we often talk to our advisors and to our investors about how do you go to market with such a concept. It's like there's so many ways, and then there's as well not many ways, because the reality is that everybody fantasizes about having a good idea and making an ICO and that it's a meme coin with a real world asset, and that's gonna work. That's what I dream on Saturday night, and I wake up on Sunday morning thinking that's not gonna happen. And that's not gonna happen because we're super happy. We're hosted by Solana. They're providing great services for us, and they're helping us in terms of PR, community, and so on. But they're not gonna make an ICO. You could be listed at a DEX, at a SEX, everything is possible, but that's not going to create a demand. And you can create an offer, but that doesn't create a demand. So it's very important when you are trying to break a system or to change a system to also anticipate the demand. My theory is that you have to create multiple demand side. If you're relying only on one demand, if I was relying only on ICO, and on the ICO, we only sell 5% of what we expect to sell, you're going to be telling me in 1 year, it's like, yeah, your ICO didn't go so well, I'll be telling you, it's because it was bear market, wrong moment. You always have excuses when you're an entrepreneur for failing, right? I don't want to be in this category, because our goal is to help a larger cause than just us being a successful business. So we looked at it in three different kinds of buyers. Individual buyers. And for individual buyers buying it through private placement or ICO, that's one route. Second route, we work with one of our co-founders is an international art curator. So we work on different editions of products which carry an NFC chip, which allows the currency to be attached to a unique product or an edition product. I really love this go-to-market aspect because we work with the greatest creative. We'll announce very shortly the first exhibition. And what it allows is that tomorrow we can add to a little coin. We did a coin edition during Art Basel last October in Paris. You could attach $1 million worth of soil to one physical coin, and that physical coin will be the proof of that. So it's kind of interesting to add regenerative value. The other thing is that adding regenerative value is great, but usually when you add value, if you buy a boat, the day after you bought it, 30% of the value is lost. In our system, if you buy one of our edition, well, since the coin is bound to have a larger redeemability in 10 years, the object that is carrying our coin is appreciating in time, regardless of its nature. Whether it's a car, a boat, a t-shirt, a cosmetic product, an artworks. So this is a very important for us route to market, is to attach to physical items such as soil cans, metals, coins, unique artworks, clothing, garments, attach regeneration of soil. The third aspect, which I find not the most important, but equally important, is of course corporations. We need corporate to want to have soil on their balance sheet. What I was telling you about putting nature on the balance sheet, putting an appreciating asset on the balance sheet, putting an intangible asset that you can revalue at fair market value, and talking about ESG in a new, renewed form. I own soil, that's a cool thing to own, but at the same time, my CFO understands that this is something he can value at its future value. So whatever you're paying $50,000 now, 6 months later, you can revalue it on your balance sheet at $5 to $6 million. So that's an interesting financial asset. So, of course, we are looking at all this wide spectrum of buyers, and we're seeing great traction in the three directions. Because people, understand that buying soil could be just like buying oxygen, could be just like buying time, or buying anything that's useful to humanity. There's almost a universalism in what we are doing.
Right. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about the farmers and the data that you're collecting from them. So first question is, where are the farmers located? I'm curious to know that. And how do they feel about, I'm assuming, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't know if they know that there's crypto and blockchain behind this project, but how do they feel with that? And what is that data that you're getting and how is it being used?
So that's a very good question, because in an ideal world, we would have farmers registering on the platform, maybe giving up part of the yield of their crops, but that would be unverifiable. And we live in a trust system, and we need to create trust. Second thing is that we need common standard to value the value of soil. We're not going to start assessing different value for each different soil. So we need a minimum standard system. Well, there is one thing in farming which is very spread out, and that there's about 30 of them which are certifiers, biodynamic certifiers. Right now, all those certifiers which are audited, which have pillars on how to measure land quality, how to measure statistics, how to measure. Right now, those people are asking farmers to pay to be certified. So we went to see them, and we're like, look, we don't want to start having individual conversation with each farmer, because that's not the work of Soilonic. That would be way too much work. We want you to give us a list. In year 1 of 1,000 farmers, in year 2 of 2,000, all the way to 20,000, as I was telling you, in 10 years, so that we include them into our ledger, into our payment ledger. Basically, we sell one coin, 50% of the value goes to a sort of escrow account, and that escrow distributes collectively to the farmers making the ledger. This is the system. What it makes is that it avoids having individual conversation with each farmer, whether they like crypto or not. That was very important for us because some of regenerative farmers are very savvy to crypto. So those could be direct people. But otherwise, some people are like, look, we just want cash. We need cash to work on our farm. We need cash to buy new machineries. We need cash to stop putting pesticides in our soil. We need cash for that. So we want to send them money. That's the first aspect. And we want to make sure that the data that we're gathering is certified. Because we don't want just like automatic data that we can't use. So the work of the certifier and our first partner will be announced in 3 weeks. And we chose 1,000 farmers with them. In terms of location, we chose to be on 5 regions, 5 main regions. So USA, Latin America and South America, Africa, Europe, and China. Though this is where we started. But every year we will include more farmers. And we'll include more farmers on thematics, which can be fashion fabric thematics, which can be women's farmer thematics, which can be geographical thematics. So for us, it's very important to add new regions or new thematics. Now, what do we do with their data? First of all, their data is the safe to impact. It means that we are qualifying the surface of land they are cultivating. We're qualifying what they're putting in their soil. What is the farming techniques? And every year, we make sure that each farmer that are going to receive royalty stays certified under the 12 pillars of a healthy soil under the EU rules. So even if you're a Chinese farmer, you need to comply with the EU rules in order to receive our check. Why EU rules? Because EU farming is the most regulated soil health regulations in the world.
Okay, so basically you're collecting the data, make sure everybody is under these EU rules, and that is also just helping make the soil better and more sustainable, I suppose.
Yeah. Basically, non-chemical covers that makes that you don't have to flip your soil every 6 months when you plant new seeds. So different technique. There's about 12 pillars, and it's very important to verify that every year that the farmer is keeping is commitment. And this was another point for us, is that if we had individual conversation with farmer, we would have to sort of buy a healthy soil once, and then we could not control what he does in year 2, year 3, year 4. That's why we decided to do a collective ledger, so that one farmer that enters in year 1 will make money in year 1, but he can stay in year 2 unless he builds a parking lot on his field, and then he won't be eligible for year 2. And that's why the full decentralized system was not working when it came to farmers, because it was impossible to control if you were buying everything at once and giving him his check for once, and not making the whole thing fungible.
Got it. And then the farmers are receiving fiat, or are they being paid in stable coins?
Good point. They can choose.
Okay.
So for those who have wallets, they can receive stable coins, but they can also choose another coin that they would want to receive. But most farmers right now who we've talked to want to receive a wire transfer, and we're trying to convince them. We're going to announce a partnership with a big crypto company about helping them to open wallets.
Yeah. No, that's interesting, and I'm glad you actually shared that about the wire transfer, because I mean, right now, and you know this, stable coins are huge. I mean, everybody in the Web3 sector is talking about stable coins, and I mean, they make payments so much easier. And it's interesting that people, you know, when you think about it, the mainstream still wants a wire transfer. It's like stable coins are so much easier. And I think that is also going to help encourage this mainstream adoption of crypto through this, you know, paying farmers in a stable coin.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Last week I was at a conference around called Blockchain for Good, and we were speaking about, you know, how a doctor in Afghanistan that needs to receive funding for his hospital, how much crypto has been helpful in order to transfer value from donation of charity straight to the person that needs it. Well, I think it's kind of the same idea with farmers. You know, it's like, we are seeing in our farmers' first interviews that we've done, because part of the ledger of the data is also to interview the farmers. and to create content around them and to show what the farm does. I mean, there's also a lot of marketing applied to why regenerative farming is good. But in Africa, they're much more used to receive stable coins or crypto in payment because it's all digitalized payment. So, for example, it's much easier for us we have more farmers taking the stable coin or let's say the crypto credit system than the cash. In Europe, they still want wire transfer. So it's just optional for the farmers. But I think long run, we also creating a system for farmers that are like doing extra on top of the 12 pillars, that are adding pillars, a system of extra reward, but in Soilo. So those farmers, if they want to receive the reward in Soilo, they will need to have their wallet. So this is what we're doing. And we are showing the use of blockchain in all the spectrum, because blockchain is useful to distribute royalty based on a promise. Our promise is that he stays without chemicals, and we need to certify that, right? So there's a bit of a chain here that needs to be taken care of. But also crypto is useful to send payment to people that needs to receive those payments and don't necessarily have a bank account, or where the cost of wire transfer is too expensive. And we have to admit the cost of transaction is there really low, especially with Solana. The other point which I want to raise and I want to flag is that the blockchain industry itself is, everybody speaks about that. I think it's a bit undue, but about issuance, energy, consuming, and everything. Well, it's good that within the blockchain system and the crypto system, there's projects like our project that are showing that even if you consume energy, you can consume energy for the sake of a better humanity and not just consume for pure capitalism. You know, we are a pure capitalist company, but we are a capitalist company about humans' health. That is the value that we want to catch there. If you have a bad soil, you have a bad food, and you have a bad health for humans. So it's sort of like we can solve a problem here. We can solve a massive problem, a price problem. People take flights every year. They buy luxury items that they buy fast fashion, but they're not willing to pay more for a product that's healthy. But health is a completely meme. Everybody speaks about health. So there's something that needs to be democratized here. Mm-hmm. And we need to find payment instrument of health, that value health. We think Soil is.
Yeah, it like I said, it's a very interesting project. I haven't heard of another project doing something similar to what you guys are doing to tokenize the soil. So if an investor, how long has the project been around now?
I started thinking about it in 2022.
Okay.
And we officially launched a program of private sales, project with artists and everything on September 21st during Climate Week at the United Nations General Assembly at the Solana headquarters in New York.
Got it. Okay.
So roughly 3 months.
3 months. So, because my question is, and I mean, maybe you haven't gotten this far yet. If somebody is investing in the soil and the token, and then they say, you know what, we actually would like the soil. We don't want to hold on to our token and have it for 10 years. We want the soil. We want to use it. Now, let's say that person is located in the United States and the soil is, how is that soil, if it's in Africa, going to get to the United States in good condition?
Well, that's a very good point, and that's the strength and weakness of the project at the same time, and I think that's a straight question, and being a straight question, it's a question that we've asked ourselves 1,000,000 times before we could find the right solution. So the number one solution is that we do expect less than 10% of coin holders to actually ask for their soil. That's a first pragmatic answer. So I want to before answering to how that would work between countries, because that's a very crazy question, and you'll see we have an answer for that. The first aspect is that we have a supply cap of 2.1 billion coin. Each coin carries in year one 1 kilogram. We don't issue the whole thing, but in 10 years, each coin will carry 35 kilos. That's 80 billion kilos of soil. 18 billion kilos of soil, value at $1 just for the sake of each kilo $1. It's still pretty low comparing to our potting soil price and everything. That would be an $80 billion market cap for the coin. So that would be a fair market value, a very large market coin cap. But that would be covered with 18,000 hectares. 18,000 hectares is the surface of Liechtenstein, which is rather small. So the cost of acquiring the land to back the coin is much lower than the value of potting soil of the land, which is my whole point. You could buy an hectare of land in Honduras for 500 hectares. But if you made a good practice on it, and if you stopped putting pesticides and fertilizer, it could come in the Soilonic protocol and could be valued at its potting soil value. So that's a more like overall broad view. Then we thought of the value of the coin. We thought, okay, so basically the value of the coin is that 50% goes to farmers, that's the impact, and the other 50% is used to purchase land or to have contract with landowners that guarantee the soil value. So just like we did for Europe, we did a contract with our farm, which guarantees the first 30 hectares, which guarantees roughly 200 million coin. So then in year one, obviously, in year 10, we need more land because we need to go all the way to 18,000 hectares. So then the idea, since it's about digital AOC, is that in each continent where we sell coin, is to have contract with farmers and to have also the community owning their own land. So we mix contractual soil farming. I was telling you there's a lot of soil farmers in the US together with the community buying their own land. The objective is that at the end of year 10, we own 18,000 hectares spread across the 5 continents. Then in terms of what kind of product do I get? Well, we looked at the price of potting soil. If you buy 3 euros per kilo of potting soil in Europe, you're actually paying a lot of money for logistic, a lot of money for bagging, a lot of money for extraction. So we thought, since we have to give 50% to other farmers to help them out for humanity, we are just going to sell a right to own that coin, but you have to come and get it. We're not delivering it to you in bags. You have to come and get it. So if you live in Africa, you have to find an African country where we have land and you have to come and get it. If you live in Europe, you have to come and get it. We will open sporadically soil stores where we'll have bulk soil for coin holders to be able to come and get directly to the physical product. But that's more of like an eventful. Otherwise, you got to come to if you're in Europe, you have to come to our farm. If you're Google and you buy a lot of soil, you have to come and we'll prepare you a large truck that you can then drive back to do your headquarters and so on. You see, that's exactly where I stand on crypto, is that what matters is not the actual physical product underlying the asset or the coin, but it's the right to this product underlying the asset. It's a very big difference because people think, your question is so correct, but what matters is that what's underlying the asset is based on a real asset world. That can be defined in a different way than just, okay, what's the price in the supermarket? But the price in the supermarket is still comparable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, well, and it's good that you have an answer to that question, right? Because, when people, for instance, tokenize wine, and I'm like, okay, they're tokenizing wine, and then people can have this wonderful wine from all over the world. Well, how do they actually get the bottle, right? So, like, sometimes they're like, well, I don't know. But yes, like you had the answer to that question. You come and you get the soil. So that makes sense as well. I mean,
you still own it.
Right, you still own it.
You got to go.
Right. For sure.
You got to go because the point of this soil is to stay in the soil. If you're a very mean investor and you want your value because you don't believe that the coin current price, or you believe the price will go down, and you're like, well, at least you're safe. You'll still have the soil ownership. It's kind of like a minimal value for the coin because we don't know that we can actually value impact. And look, I'm an investor. I don't know how much value I put to impact in an investment, but I know that if my investment is good because somebody find a good system to create an intrinsic value, and at the same time I'm doing impact, then I might look at it more interested.
Right.
And sorry to add that, but I've had a lot of board members that will speak after that podcast. But I have board members who are like, yeah, but your thing is, what's the intrinsic value if I don't get the soil at my house and everything? And I'm like, well, what's the intrinsic value of 80% of crypto where you're buying a meme coin, or where you're buying a game that does not exist yet that might exist, and you're buying the future IP of this game? We're all talking about futures in a way, but futures needs to be connected to rights, because those rights are connected to the size of the market that you're actually talking about.
Right, and then everything that you're doing is obviously documented on the Solana blockchain, so it's very transparent, so people can see, okay, there's this soil, it's here, that lives on the blockchain. It's not going to be deleted or erased or messed up. It's there and it's transparent, which I think is obviously a huge point here.
And you revise that every year. It's not, I do that in 25, we'll see in 2035 how the standard is. Every year, based on how much coins we've sold, based on how many farmers are joining, we increase the redeemability of physical soil. So it's kind of like people can see the evolution of the project almost in a live manner. And yes, it's protected on the blockchain, but it's also public on our website. Mm-hmm. So it's not that like we're trying to hide anything, or we're just making it open. And it makes sense. When you do, if you do impact, you're going to tell how many people you've helped, right? You're not going to keep it for you and say, this is like the Coca-Cola recipe, I have to put that in a safe. The blockchain is an extra layer on public knowledge, right. I would say, in this regard.
Right. So, and I want to go back, and this is shifting gears again. Now, we mentioned your co-founder, Arizona Muse. I met her in New York. She's amazing. She's a former supermodel, but she's now a farmer, and she's very big into impact. So, Arizona, unfortunately, is not with us today. Maybe we can do another episode with her. But what is her role in all of this?
Well, so Victoire de Portales, my wife, and I started 91530, and Victoire, as president of 91530, worked a lot on how to implement within our farm a technology project with me. But then, you can only be your only farm, right? When you have your farm, you're still working for your own house. And we thought it was important for a project like Soilonic to have somebody that comes in with us, who has a larger spectrum of more farmers that she speaks with. Arizona created a charity called Dirt, which is more specialized into fabric. How the fashion world is using healthy fabric that takes good care of soil, so the opposite of fast fashion, if you want to call it this way. And I spoke with her about the project about 2.5 years ago, and I said, look, this is what we're trying to do. And she thought it was crazy, but she also thought it was there's something really interesting there. And I think that's what convinced her to join the project. And it was a project, and then she became co-founder of it. So I really consider that we all co-founded this thing, because we worked so much on it. Has evolved so much in the past 2 years as well. Was that when you have a charity, you go back to people, you ask them for help, they help. But I told her, I said, look, it's great, but if there's another cause that shows up, then we know how hard it is to keep people involved in the same cause over and over. And I think that's the Web3 aspect convinced her. Because for her to get involved was that means that people are going to have an economy connected to helping farming, to helping what I'm already helping. I think that's the first aspect. The second aspect is that she's a great narrator. She's a great storyteller. She's a great social media user. And, soil is not an easy theme. It could be boring comparing to gold or... So I think it's also important to have people that are able to speak about it. Victoire speaks about it through the art angle. Arjona speaks about it through the activist angle. I try to speak more about in the business language, but just to have three complementary voices about why we need to create a financing system for soil was very much needed.
Yeah, she does a great job. I agree.
She's great for that, and honestly, we're all co-founders, but we also became good friends,
right?
Because when you share a common cause, it's not like, yes, I mean, we're all here to make money and create a good business but at the end of the day, we're creating a good business with a larger underlying morality than a lot of projects that I've done in my past, without judging other entrepreneurs.
Right. No, I mean, it's your background is very interesting. You're a lawyer, you were the CEO of this fashion magazine, and now you're doing this regenerative soil crypto project. I mean, it's fascinating to me, your background.
It's funny because I speak to my sons about it, who are 8 and 11, and they can't really know what's my job. They can't figure it out. They're like, okay, so you were a lawyer. I mean, what you just said. And I couldn't figure it out myself, what job to put. Yeah, you could put your job. I'm like a president of this company, but president is not a job, right? It's chairman. This is not a job. I decided on my Instagram account to find a job name for myself, and I called it Chief Farming Officer. I thought that was maybe the best way to. So I try to be a farmer, but I'm not a farmer. I'm pretty bad in the field. I'm not a very manual person, so I try to be a Chief Farming Officer, which is how to rethink what a farm will be in the next 100 years.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Benjamin, we're running low on time, so do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with our listeners?
Well, it's with our listeners and it's with you too. It's what we are trying to do is such a hard subject that we need every single opinion leaders of the crypto space to carry the message with us. Because they find it smart, or because they find it weird, or because they find it useful. The spectrum of reason why people should join this is so large, because you could just like earthworms and think that's cool and buy it. Or you could think that your health is so important that you need to finance farming. Or you could think that soil is so important for humanity that we need it. Or you could think that crypto should help something and you would do it. Or you could just join our program and just be friends with us and let us make soil the highest luxury items to own. And we come back to my luxury background, but the highest luxury item to own. I mean, I'd rather own a kilogram of soil than a very fancy leather bag, for example.
I hope you can convince myself and others to do that, because I like my bags.
I know you do. You started the podcast with it.
Yeah.
But if you had a good bag and a good soil cans on your fireplace or in your house, you would be doing both sides of it. So
yeah,
we're not anti-consumerism. We just think that soil should be part of consumerism as well.
It's a great message. Wonderful. Benjamin, if people want to connect with you or learn more about the project, how do they do that? Is there a Discord or an X handle, or where's the light paper?
So we have X, we have Soilonic.com where the light paper is open. They can reach out to me on my personal social media, LinkedIn. Discord will open on June 21st. Once the coin is listed. We don't want to do like a pre-launch social media activity. Right now, we're just talking to people. We're just bringing in investors and doing private placement. So feel free to reach out if you have any interest in this.
Great. Well, wonderful. I'm sure our listeners are going to be interested, so definitely reach out. And Benjamin, as always, it was a pleasure speaking with you. I'm glad we could reconnect here in beautiful Paris, and I'm looking forward to staying in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Special thanks to 4 Labs Digital for producing Web3 Deep Dive podcast. I'd also like to thank the sponsors behind Web3 Deep Dive. You can click the links in the show notes to learn more about each of the Web3 initiatives from these sponsors. Finally, thanks to the listeners for tuning in. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and share.